This is our 8th session in our discussion of critical theory, and actually part 4 of our discussion of liberalism, having also spent 3 sessions talking about the tenets of liberalism. With our review of liberalism, liberal governance nearly complete, we will be returning to our discussion of critical inquiry. Hopefully, we can continue our discussion with an understanding of what we're losing, liberal self-governance, and with my proposed hypothesis on why we have chosen to lose it. Let's be clear, this loss is not a change that just happened. Change rarely just happens. We have, over decades, intentionally and unintentionally chosen to shift from liberalism to critical inquiry by aligning ourselves with the tenets of critical theory without even knowing it. We probably did not mean to align ourselves to those tenets, but as we will discuss over the next several weeks, we are thus aligned. And that shift, I believe, is behind us and irreversible, irrevocable. My conclusion is that we, the people of the United States, have consciously and or unconsciously decided to abandon liberal governance by abandoning the tenets of liberal governance to get more done, or because we just felt like it, in the face of the potentially existential threats that have occurred, are occurring, or that we are told are likely to occur. We have chosen to regard doing something quickly as a higher priority than self-governance. I regret this greatly, but there you are. The change is the result of both well-intentioned and malevolently intentioned actions by individuals and agencies across the spectrum of politics, from the left to the right, from progressive to conservative. Recently, as I said last session, President Biden in his farewell address warned of the trend toward oligarchy, which is a potential form of autocracy that we may be heading toward. His implied message was that the right was the cause of this accelerating move away from self-governing liberalism. That statement, that implication is, in my opinion, self-serving. While the right seems to want to move U.S. governance in the direction of oligarchy, autocratic rule by oligarchs, the few, primarily for self-serving interests, this appears simply a reaction to the left's efforts over decades to move U.S. governance in the direction of bureaucracy, autocratic rule by an ever-expanding group of non-elected government officials working in an ever-expanding portfolio of human endeavors. In neither case is the desired end state the limited government and self-governance objectives of liberalism. The left and the right, progressives and conservatives, atheists and evangelists, men and women, gays and straights, binary and non-binary, transgender and cisgender, pro-life and pro-choice, gun owners and gun regulators, have all been agents of our migration from liberalism to critical inquiry and from self-governance to autocracy. It is simply a sign of who we are and what we believe, of how we live and what is important to us. In my opinion, no amount of hand-wringing and demagoguery, demonstrations or insurrections will reverse this shift. These types of efforts by the left and the right may be cloaked in words of restoring liberty or limiting government, but they will likely only determine which autocrats will take over governing first and which groups will profit or lose from that takeover. Now, for the general who asked the question I discussed earlier in the video, our shift from liberalism to critical theory explains how and why we voted for who we voted for when we knew exactly what they had done and how they had lived their lives. that choice, those votes, those candidates are only symptoms. We're here to talk about the disease, if it is a disease. To foreshadow the topics in future weeks, critical inquiry is absolutely incompatible with self-governance. The cost of rejecting liberalism is the necessary adoption of autocracy of one form or another. And as we return to our discussion of critical inquiry, we will focus on the problems associated with the tenets of that dogma to potentially allow a smoother landing at a location we have never been. See you next week. Aloha.